Welcome to ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. Get ready to be inspired to be all you were called and created to be. Join us as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. This is your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. Let's get ready for spiritual upliftment, healing stories, miracles, and divine goodness. Get ready for an amazing segment of ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast with host Victory Lyric.
And my name is Victory Lyric, and thank you guys so much for this opportunity to be here with you this morning and to share with you some of the things I have learned over the years through divorce and the processing of that. And I wanted to kind of first tell you guys a little bit about me so we can kind of get to know each other, and then we can kind of go from there on our topic. My name is Victory Lyric, and I am an author of a book called Disappointed You're Not Alone, and that should be out here in the coming months. And I am also a talk show host on a show called ArieVive Studios, and that show is hosted on YouTube as well as the Daily Gospel Network. So y'all can check it out there. But I wanted to, kind of talk about my passion in life is helping others to become all they were called and created to be. And so that is why I'm here today. Because I found when I went through divorce 9.5 years ago that I felt like the rug, the actual carpet was like ripped out from under me. Everything I had built my life upon felt as though it was no longer there. And the firm footing that I believed in and depended on for me and my sons was not what it had been before. For me, the loss of an individual that was such an integral part of me, my other half, my family, for 19 years was devastating. And you may be in a place right now where you're just beginning that place of leaving a relationship, and you may be in that devastating spot where I was, the place at which one can barely breathe, much less, go forward. And it's a very emotional time, and it's a huge trauma. It's a huge loss. For some of you, you may be a little further in the process, maybe a few months or even years past, yet there's still this lingering feeling of it following you. Kind of like a dark cloud over your head. One of those kind of Eeyore moments, if we can visualize. But for me, it was that way for quite a bit. There was the original devastation, and then there was the cloud that followed. And I realized over time, as I began to heal and as I began to work through learning about how to care for myself, how to progress in my life through counseling and other sources, I began to learn that disappointment is a topic that many of us are just not comfortable addressing. It's one of those topics that is so taboo. It feels in so many parts of society. I know that in the religious church environment, disappointment can be a very negative topic. And that's an environment where we're focused on positivity, focused on gratefulness. And so it was really difficult for me to admit the disappointment to myself because of that religious upbringing. Also, I am a type A personality, and I am one of those people that's like, you know what, suck it up and deal. Let's get past this. It's time to go and be everything that, that I want to be and so forth. And that is great, except that when we do not face those disappointments and admit those disappointments, even verbalize them out loud. Say, I'm so disappointed that, my life is not going to be what I thought it was going to be, that my kids have now something that they have to deal with that they shouldn't have had to deal with. Now I am having to pay the bills on my own and find a new place to live and those kind of things. Those were very disappointing things for me, but yet I was not voicing them. I was trying to find false positivity in the moment in order to look like I was fine, present like I was fine to the outside world. And yet, even to myself, I was lying. I wasn't fine with having to sell my house and pay all the bills and figure out how we're going to mow the lawn and having 2 little boys trying to become men and doing, household projects that their father had been doing in the past. It was quite a devastating road, and I was not being honest with myself. And I kind of had this picture in my head years later as some time went by. There's a man and he is climbing up a hill and he is experiencing a lot of landmines, explosions as he's climbing up this hill desperately, trying to get to the top. There are explosions happening. He loses a toe. He loses a limb. He is injured to his shoulder. He's, bleeding everywhere. He's got, his other arm blown off and so on and so forth. And now he's climbing up this hill with his teeth because that's about all he's got left. And he's not willing to give up. And yet he is severely injured and extremely exhausted. That was me. And maybe that is you guys. And so kind of want to talk about what we do with disappointment when we don't face it. That hill that he was climbing up, that was him trying to avoid the valley of disappointment. And when you go through a divorce, there is a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of pain. And when it's not properly voiced and addressed, when forgiveness isn't worked through, when just the loss of what we thought our lives were going to be like, our dreams and our hopes, when those aren't addressed, then what happens is we're the ones trying to find other ways out versus walking through the sadness, processing it, being authentic and real with ourselves, loving ourselves and giving ourselves the compassion to feel what we feel in that moment. If we instead take that false positivity and start climbing up that hill, there are so many landmines. And those landmines are things usually of our own creation. So I don't know about you guys, but post-divorce, I told myself, well, it's been kind of rough for a while, the last year or so in our marriage. And so, you know what? I'm ready to move on because I've been in a negative space with him anyway for a while. So that means that I'm ready for a relationship, right? Okay, maybe not. So hopping out there on the dating train almost immediately after a 19-year relationship, a 16-year marriage, created some landmines that I made myself. And those landmines can definitely blow up and cause you some serious wounds. When you're not healed and you haven't even begin to address and admit those disappointments to yourself and learn to have compassion for yourself, and you're out there maybe looking for someone else to fill this gaping hole inside of you. Because when you're married, two become one. And when that ends, unfortunately, you're ripped apart. And even if it wasn't the greatest of marriages, you still have two people that were together that are now ripped apart. So there are gaping wounds on each individual. That just is. Unfortunately, that's how it feels. And that's why, no one wants their worst enemy to even have to go through what some of us have been through in this process. A lot of pain. But when we try to fill that gaping hole, that giant wound that used to be filled by another individual in the wrong timing, or just when we try to fill a gaping hole inside of us, maybe even from childhood, that gaping hole could have started from, wounds from your childhood. And we're, as humans, busy trying to make that pain go away. Well, when we're trying to fill it with other individuals, or other things outside of our authentic self and who we are, then we're going out into the world looking for something that doesn't exist. There is no one and no thing on this planet besides you and your creator that can fill that hole. And that hole needs to be healed, not filled with another individual, because the weight of that is toxic. It's unhealthy. And so I found myself going out and dating and trying to fill that hole with a new individual. Let's hurry and make this pain stop, and let's fix the problem. Clearly, it's the singleness that needs to be fixed, and that is what I did with it. But there are other ways to deal with the gaping hole. It can be also numbing. I mean, you guys, have we scrolled, hours of social media? Have we sat in front of Netflix for hours upon hours, just time wasting? Have we maybe filled it with some alcohol or drugs or sex or, my goodness, even religion? If I can just listen to 5 more inspirational messages, then maybe I can just not feel this pain. But the pain is there because it's an actual wound that needs to be healed. And there is no amount of numbing through outside sources that are going to fill that space. I mean, my goodness, all of my Amazon shopping just could not even do it. So, it sounds funny, but that's the reality of our human nature. And so as we begin to, kind of go forward, we want to kind of take a peek at those pitfalls and realize that if I'm out there shopping away, trying to numb this thing, then I might be creating more toxicity and a more unhealthy environment for me and my family. I still have 2 young boys to raise. They still need a roof over their head. They still need medical care. If I've spent all of our money trying to make the pain go away, it might not be particularly healthy. In fact, it creates more levels of disappointment because I am now creating landmines for myself. And it's because I didn't pause to love myself, to have compassion, and to heal. And that's okay. We do those things, but we want to kind of start to see them before we catch ourselves looking like this guy climbing up the side of the hill with all his limbs blown off, because he created those landmines for himself. So in the midst of pain, that is something to kind of look out for. Am I looking for something, check your motives. Am I looking for something outside of myself that is potentially got the pressure of having to fill this void, this loss? And so, that's one of the things that we need to really pay attention to. And then if we allow, because this is what I did, I allow myself to, date. And then so when you date, of course, it's not likely that the first person that you meet is going to be Prince Charming. So then what happens? Okay, I've got a disappointment from Joe and Bill and Josh and Phil and whoever, and they're stacking up. They're stacking up. And they're a weight of disappointment, but it's also, rejection. It is disillusionment. It can turn into cynicism because I didn't first heal inside myself. I'm expecting these people to fill these, this space, and they cannot. And I cannot fill that space for them either. So there's a lot of negativity that is created in moving on too quickly. And the same goes with, for instance, okay, now I'm drinking too much. I'm not paying attention to my kids. I am out spending too much money. I'm numbing in all sorts of ways. I'm zoned out while, maybe my family and friends need me, and I'm just scrolling my phone and, just trying to numb. Well, am I not creating more disappointment for myself when I have disconnect with my kids, disconnect from my friends, disconnect from my family? Those numbing things, they do pile up, and then they create troubles of their own. So now I've got multiplied disappointment that I created, and I still haven't dealt with it. So the wounds continue to grow and get worse, and we start creating kind of a wheel. And it's growing, and it's getting bigger and bigger as that giant ball rolls down the hill and takes traction. So it's very important that we do not allow ourselves, out of kindness and love for ourselves, that we don't allow ourselves to create this monster of disappointment that now we're under it and we are bitter and we are cynical and we're in that space where, my gosh, nothing matters. Why bother anyway? Because that is the worst place to be. I mean, that is the place where we make the worst decisions. That is the place where there is potential for harming ourselves. I mean, even the potential for thoughts of suicide and things of that nature. And I know because, I've been there. And when you start to believe that the whole world is just a dark place and that nothing is good out there, so why bother? I'll just do whatever anyway. And imagine the amount of ripple effect from that on your kids, on your family, on your relationships when you get to that space. So I don't want y'all to get to that space. I don't want you out there looking for something to fill you up that it doesn't exist. There's nothing outside of you. There's no such thing as I will be happier if, because that pain, that sort of thundercloud over your head, it is not something that you can run from. Grief and disappointment are not something you can run from. It will hunt you down like the dog that you are, like they say, in the most inappropriate times. And so today I just wanted to encourage you guys that there is hope and there is a way out of our disappointed space, and there is a way to begin to build upon this life that we thought, was pulled out from under us. It is okay to build again, but this time in a different way with very precious stones. And we want the foundation of our life to be that of love for ourselves. And ladies, I did not begin my marriage at 21 years old knowing how to love myself. I came from a religious background that taught me to love the Lord and to love others and serve them, and that was what love was. And I'm not saying that serving others and loving others is not love, but we have to go back to, if we're gonna put ourselves in that position, then we have to go back and look at what that actual command was. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, if you don't love yourself, let's rewind. How can we love someone else? We can't. We don't have an overflow of love. And what we are giving out there that we feel is probably love is usually a need, something we're getting fulfilled by doing. And it's not an unconditional love. It's a tainted love. It's got motives. So the first thing that we need to do in order to be able to kind of pull ourselves out of that disappointment pit is to be honest with ourselves. I am so disappointed that this is not the life that I wanted for myself. It's not the life I wanted for my children. It's not the life I wanted for my ex-husband. I wanted this amazing and beautiful life. This is what I would have chosen for us. And I'm very disappointed that life did not go the way that I desired. And yet I'm going to now grieve that and walk through that valley, because if you walk through the valley versus trying to climb up, and we talked about all of those landmines, if that gentleman had walked through the valley and dealt with those things and verbalized those things, maybe he looked for someone to talk to, a therapist, and worked and been honest with themselves, it would have been less landmines they created for themselves, less pain that they would have had to walk through, like me. And walking on through that valley, you don't have to camp there. You don't have to live there. If you process those emotions, they're not inside of you anymore. They get to flow on out like clouds in the sky. They're going to float by. We're going to acknowledge them, and we're going to let them go on through. We don't have to stay stuck in any of those emotions. They're just emotions. And it's the same with, the bitterness of your experience with someone. That bitterness can get us a little stuck. We don't have to stay there. We don't have to keep our focus on what was and on that individual. If we walk on through that valley of disappointment and allow ourselves to just pour out and verbalize those things, and then we're going to move into a place of learning to love ourselves. But some of the things I've learned about learning to love self is that it's not all about massages and mimosas and whatnot. It's not. It's not self-care necessarily in the way that people speak about. Learning to love myself had to do with compassion. So here I am, a mother of 2 boys, single, and running businesses of my own. And when my ex-husband left, we had multiple bakeries and a restaurant, and I had a lot of employees, and I did not even feel like getting off the floor to stop crying, but I did need to take care of my businesses. So at that point, I needed to, when I got home at the end of the day, instead of forcing myself to, get up and go out and try to, go out with friends or try to be okay or whatever, it became a place of allowing myself compassion. That was a long day. The grief is taking a lot of your energy. It's okay that you're a little weary, and it's okay to sit here and rest. It's okay to cry, and it is okay to feel what you're feeling. And by feeling what you're feeling, it actually does the opposite. We don't tend to get stuck there. We tend to be able to move forward from it. Having compassion for yourself when you're coming up on a holiday and you're not feeling like decorating, and you've got these kids and you know that they want to decorate for Christmas. Allowing yourself to feel that in your private space and saying, it's going to be different this year. I'm really disappointed that it's going to be different this year, but maybe it's time to create some new traditions with my kids. In fact, isn't that self-love? I deserve to enjoy this holiday. I deserve to create new memories. I deserve that. And my kids deserve that too. And so let's create new memories. One of the things that I did in the learning to love myself was that of what I called run off the pistol. Don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I started to learn and teach myself to run. So I would start with my headphones in and I'd listen to some angry music. I mean, we're talking Avril Lavigne, the angriest music, chick music I could find. I'd put it in my headphones. And I was angry, with my circumstance. And so I would teach myself to run. At first it started there on my treadmill. So I would run just like the chorus of the song. And then I would walk the verses and the bridge and so forth. And over time, I got to the place where I could run the entire song. And then I started to go out into nature. And I would go trails and I would do trail running. And I would run a song and then I would rest a song. And then I would run another song and rest a song until I got to where I could run 4 or 5 songs. And it wasn't about getting fit. I wasn't there abusing myself saying, you need to get fit because you're single now. Don't do that to yourself. Be loving and kind to yourself. If you would not talk that way to someone else, please do not talk that way to yourself. But I did that. I learned to run and I spent time outdoors. And, guys, of course it builds endorphins. Of course you're feeling better. You got more energy. Of course your body starts to look better. But the motive was, I am getting this anger out. I'm allowing myself that feel time, and I'm allowing myself time to myself, separate from my kids, separate from my businesses, and I'm beginning to become me, authentically me. I apparently love to run. I thought I hated it. I thought it was the worst thing ever. And apparently I love to run. I've been running now for 9 years. I did a Spartan race. A girl who, could barely make it through a single course, of running, ran a 15.5-mile Spartan with like 30 obstacles. And you guys, I did that because I began to love myself enough to go out and try new things, to, do the things I had been putting off, because there's something about a great trauma and loss that does remind you that you absolutely have a short life and that nothing is promised. And, going out and making new memories, going out and trying things that you haven't tried before. But each time I ran a mile and grew in the mileage that I could do you know I felt more and more strong, less like a victim that had been abused and abandoned. I wasn't that girl. I was becoming this strong person who could do hard things. And, I was able to sell my home. I mean, I did that. That was a huge milestone, y'all. And get into a place that was more affordable for me and my sons. And I was able to run businesses without him, by myself. I mean, I can do hard things, but each time you do something and encourage yourself and do it for the right motives, to love yourself and say, I can do this. I can do these hard things. Don't let those hard things make you feel like a victim. Stand up and say, no, this hurts. I don't want to have to do this myself, but guess what? I learned how to mow a lawn. Okay. I learned how to get out there and run. I learned how to get out there and start a podcast. I did that this year. I'm still growing in all that God called and created me to do and be. And so I just want to encourage you to take those little steps and try new things and make new memories and take your eyes off of the past and off of that person who hurt you and put your eyes on you, because you're amazing creation. You have so much inside of you that the world needs, and you are worthy of loving yourself. You are worthy of creating new memories and going for your callings and your dreams. You're worthy of that. And now you don't have somebody who can tell you that you can't. I breed Great Danes. Nobody can tell me that I can't. In the past, I had a husband who said, no way can you breed dogs. And that's something that I love, y'all. That's authentic to me. And so I get to be me, fully me. And that is a silver lining in what you're going through right now. You're going to learn to be fully you if you just get a little brave each day, just a wee bit brave. Maybe try a new recipe today. Maybe go and check out a new park and walk around it. But get out there and just be a little bit more brave each day, and you're going to build upon that like stair steps until all of a sudden you're not a victim feeling like a victim anymore. You are feeling victorious, and you too can also name yourself Victory, because it's worth it. It's worth you encouraging yourself and building yourself up, because we can't depend on anything on the outside of us to do that. Those people, those things, they can pass away. They can be gone, as we all know. We've all experienced that. But yet I will still be there with me at the end of the day. And I am the one responsible for loving me and for being my full, authentic, beautiful self on this planet. So you guys, I just want to let you know that I love you, and I am here for you. If you want to reach out, of course, I'm happy to encourage you. And if you'd like to check out our channel, ArieViveStudios.com, or ArieVive Studios on YouTube and all the social media, we interview a ton of artisans that are out there doing all God called and created them to do and be, and they are encouraging you. They're telling amazing stories and also have great tutorials. So if you're, kind of needing some inspiration, check it out.
Thanks for tuning in to the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. It's our goal to inspire you to be all you were called and created to be. Join us next week as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. It's your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. So until next week, God bless from your friends at the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast and your host, Victory Lyric.